it seems that it's ambiguous as to where you fall on the political spectrum. Could you sort of explain where you would describe yourself on the political spectrum as well as some of your positions?
Sure. I mean, when I do a political compass test, I always and very consistently fall center left in my policy preferences. Um, and so I've always considered myself to be part of the left.
Have
Yeah.
you ever described yourself with the term classical liberal?
Oh, absolutely.
So you use that term.
Yeah, it's the intellectual tradition that I come from.
But classical liberalism is essentially libertarianism, though, in terms
No,
of
it's not.
economic policy.
Well, I mean, kind of. The thing is, the problem with libertarianism, in my opinion, is the same problem that infests almost every political wing at the moment. It's the blaming of the problems on X. In libertarianism, it's the state. They blame all problems on the state. I don't blame all problems on the state. For the alt right, it's the Jews. For the far left, it's the patriarchy. And it's never that simple. It's just never that simple, and it's redundant and reductive. And like I said, I'm not against government doing things. I am for government doing things that are productive. I think it's just a case of what you consider to be right and wrong use of government. For example, I very much despise debating corporate regulation with libertarians, because they've got this funny idea that the market will solve all problems, not thinking about they'll say, well, I mean, let's say company X puts out a poison product. I mean, the Yelp reviews will reflect that, and people will avoid going there, and they'll change because otherwise people will die. And it's like, okay, but how many people have to die in the meantime?
Yeah.
That some light regulation, as in you're not allowed to put poisonous ingredients in your product or something, would have saved. And so this is why I'm not a libertarian. But it's the same intellectual tradition, but I don't take it the way that libertarians take it. I think everything's down to interpretation. I mean, technically, I'm what you would call a social liberal, because I'm okay with certain social programs and social healthcare.
Would you say you're a social democrat?
Depends how you're defining that, to be honest.
Okay, so a social democrat is essentially someone who they believe in capitalism with the heavy welfare state and regulation.
Yeah.
So that's what you define. Because that and classical liberal are very much different. And I think that in a time now where political terms are just so, divisive,
the reason I use the term classical liberal is because ultimately that's where my core principles are. And I use that term specifically to differentiate myself from a socialist, because there is an innate tendency for people to think that anyone who is in favor of a social program must also be a socialist. And so progressives very much are socialists these days, as far as I can tell. And I use the term classical liberal to let people know that I am not a continental in my philosophy.
Okay, so I just want to say that those two terms could not be more different, and I'm not necessarily saying that you're not left-wing. I'm just saying that if you want to describe yourself correctly, I think that it's contributing to the whole sort of situation that we have of confusion on the term classical liberal, because a classical liberal date back to people like Herbert Spencer, who did not want any government regulation and pretty much are opposed to pretty much everything that you're advocating for now. So I'm not really trying to say you're not.
Yeah, but
left-wing.
times change. I mean, things, and like I said, I really use the term just to make sure that people are aware. But even then, it doesn't change where I fall on the political compass.
Right.